You're watching Business Access TV.
Business Access.
Business Access. Business Access.
Business Access.
You are watching Business Access TV.
Business Access TV.
Serious about business.
Serious about business.
Business Access TV was on location at the Montego Convention Center for the CanEx conference, which gave insight on the very best state-of-the-art grow facilities, technology, branding, and political advocacy in the cannabis industry. Here are the highlights.
The question I get asked most often around this project is, why? What was the motivation? What prompted it? And I think for me, it's just looking and seeing that Jamaica for so long has been associated with this plant, as First Man rightly says. And now you look at it's become an industry, it's become a business. And it becomes a real opportunity. It becomes something that in many ways can actually change the options for this country. It can generate jobs, it can generate taxes, it can be a growth mechanism for GDP, which Jamaica has languished with for some time. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity. And what we want to do with CanEx is really to facilitate that conversation, is to have the folks who are in the industry, who are looking to get into the industry, both locally and overseas, to come in here and have some information exchange with some experts from overseas and some experts here in Jamaica who are in the business. And that's what CanEx is about. It's about us just providing a platform for different stakeholders and different people looking to understand the opportunity that's in front of them.
Talk to us about what went into planning a conference such as this and the opportunities that this conference will afford persons who are here.
Well, a lot of work, some tears. No, it's really just trying to bring alive an idea, an idea that we could facilitate a conversation that could really move this industry forward. I mean, this is just, it's really, when you sit and you look at it, it's such a compelling opportunity to sort of sit by and say the conversations are not really progressing in a way that something fruitful might happen. That really leads you to say, well, how could we play a role in trying to elevate that conversation? And that's really all we've tried to do. Is there's expertise here, there's interest here, and there's opportunity. And how could we just bring that together? That's what we try to do.
Right. What is the takeaway? What do you want persons who are here to take away from the conference?
I want, number one, for them to understand the scope of this opportunity. I want them to see how varied and lucrative and interesting the cannabis industry can be. There's farming, yes, there's processing, there's extracts, there's medical research, there's a lot of different opportunities. And so I really hope that people come here, not just the newbies, they're people who just have a fascination and interest, and they've come to attend to see what's available, but also people who came in thinking, I'm going to be a farmer. That's what I'm going to do. And then hopefully they'll hear something that says, boy, I don't need to be a farmer if that's not what I want to do, because I want to pursue some other aspect of it. So really and truly just having an increased amount of knowledge about what's available in the industry, and then hopefully that will guide people's decisions in terms of what they pursue. And then the second key thing that we want to have happen is real, tangible conversations and business opportunities coming, whether it's looking for research professionals to engage, whether it's for strategic partnerships, and some of that's already happened, and that's encouraging. A gentleman just came up to me who's been doing some work here in Jamaica for quite some time, and he said, boy, I take my hat off to you, because there's at least 7 to 10 of the powerhouses who are below the surface. They're all here. And that's what you want. You want people to say, because they believe in Jamaica, they see the opportunity. I think it's just that the wider population may not have fully embraced what the opportunity is, and the channels haven't been sparked to sort of move it forward, and that's what has to happen.
I started cannabis activism maybe 25 years ago when I lived in New York, and I treated drug addicts with actually an African shrub from Gabon called ibogaine, and I came across, we treated addicts who became sick with AIDS, and it was late 80s, and we figured, we saw that people AIDS patients were using cannabis. It really helped them in a number of ways. And that was really my first interaction with cannabis as a medicine, even though it's been around many cultures as a medicine around the world for thousands of years. And when I moved to Israel, I was part of a government committee to study cannabis legal status, and Professor Meshulam, the famous scientist who isolated THC, also suggested that cannabis should be accessible for as a medicine for very sick individuals. That was in 1995. We are now 21 years later. There's a great industry that emerged in the United States in the last, ever since 1995, when California passed the first medical cannabis ballot. California is a trend-setting state. Started the trend, and other states have followed. There are now in the United States 25 states with medical cannabis laws in place, including the District of Columbia. And there are 13 states that have adopted CBD-only laws. As a general statement, I would like to say that anyone who's going into a single cannabinoids, into pharmaceutical development of single cannabinoids or synthetic cannabinoids or analogs from the experience around the world, it's bound to fail. The plant gives its most wonderful benefits when you have multiple cannabinoids involved, and once you try to isolate single cannabinoids, your safety profile and toxicity profile and side effects are much worse. So that's an observation I'd like to make. We see Uruguay, who's done a complete legalization of cannabis. The Uruguayan medical cannabis program is in its infancy. The recreational is moving forward. Europe is lagging behind the rest of the world as a general statement. There is great demand in Europe for medical cannabis. Also, I would like to say that from my experience, many governments do not want to grow medical cannabis. They would like to import it. And that is for Jamaica, that's where the upside of the industry lies. If you can get the underground industry and all these wonderful people who grew the medical cannabis and were prosecuted and chased after, and that was my case as well. I wasn't a grower, but I was an activist, and I was chased by police and arrested and so on for many number of times and did a number of places. If all those great people can become now leaders in growing and get the quality standardized and the wonderful strains that exist here in Jamaica into standardized and good quality levels, then the potential for export is enormous.
I wanted to use these 5 minutes that I have with you primarily to focus on the area of responsibility that I have in government and how I see the cannabis experience benefiting the economy in Jamaica over the years, and indeed providing for the wider tourism community the strong passion points that people respond to, and for which we, as an industry that really is a system of moving parts, yes, which parts must converge seamlessly to provide an experience that people pay large amount of money for and travel all over the world to realize. The fact is that last year, 1.2 billion people flew across the nations of the world to buy that experience. A program for growth on the basis of saying Jamaica needs to have 5 million visitors annually, and we need to earn $5 billion in that process. How do you do it? And we established some networks and we established some pillars. And I want to focus on one of those networks with you, the Health and Wellness Network. Because I believe that listening to you a while ago, I saw very clearly how the cannabis product and its application could fit neatly in a network of health and wellness that will drive a new demographic into Jamaica with a higher spend and will be able to establish us as a destination with a difference. And I've looked around also at where we could do it, because it doesn't make sense for me to talk about the science of it. You know it, right? The technology of it, you embrace it. Let me talk to you about how you can work with me to drive this new experience and to invest in the prosperity agenda that the country has. So we have looked at where we could do it. We have been a destination that's been characterized essentially by all-inclusives and mass tourism to a large extent. But we didn't begin that way, and we certainly don't want to end that way. And we believe that we can do product differentiation, and we can do a level of product diversification, which enables us to be attractive to all demographics. And there is an element that I have called the rustic luxury segment of the market. Some people say that it's the sort of rural and it's a sort of nature luxury. It's not the formal luxury that you're accustomed to. It's the kind of luxury where you want golden forceps, yes, but the bathroom must be outside. Yes? You want to have nice fluffy cushions and so on, but it must be on driftwood base. And wonderful mattresses, nicely stuffed, but it must be on bamboo base. So you want to stay close to nature. And you want to be able to utilize the nutraceutical values of the rich biodiversity of your neighborhood. And so what we have seen is that there's a market that values $494 billion of this across the globe. And we want a piece of it. And what we have found also is that cannabis-infused experiences have added much to health and wellness across the space. And we have looked at what's happened in Colorado, where we saw when that intervention came, bookings increased by over 175% in a given year. And we saw also what happened in Amsterdam and other places. So we are looking at those models. So I have established in the ministry the Health and Wellness Network. I think I see a few members of the Health and Wellness Network in the audience. And their job is to define now the policy that will provide the framework within which cannabis-infused health and wellness experience will be a reality in Jamaica. We're going to define that in terms of attractions, because we already have a policy for attractions, and we already have a framework within which attractions operate in the industry. But in order to be a little more careful in defining the fiscal space within which you can operate, we have to tweak that policy arrangement. And we're going to have a rollout of that in full order by the end of 2017.
Where are we now in terms of finalizing deals with the global cannabis industry?
Well, the process has been
not as fast as would be anticipated, simply because within the global context, we do have international protocols to observe. And the push, therefore, is to do far more what you call sensitization. Much of what was said here today about educating and getting people to understand what are the parameters within which we can operate. We're certainly not at the stage yet where we can talk about international movement of marijuana, nor indeed in terms of international business engagements. But at the domestic level, we certainly have given licenses for medical applications and for research. And I believe that this is where much of the energy will have to be focused over the next few years until we have navigated what I said this morning, that choppy sea of international acceptance.
All right. So also, what are the market projections looking like for Jamaica in this cannabis health tourism?
Well, the market is rich. It's a $494 billion market, which is out there. There's a call for it. I just came out of Canada, where our arrivals for the last 2 years have softened a bit. But these are new areas that we can use to drive a new demographic. And the whole business of broadening the base, and as Dr. Naif said, alternative tourism is a huge and exciting area, and we want to explore that. So the market is strong, it is there. What we want now is investment in these areas. I have defined an area of Jamaica that I believe is going to be suitable for that along the southwestern seacoast. And I do believe that this is a new frontier that now begs for development, and development in a structured and organized way. Not like what we have even on the North Coast, a different kind of arrangement, low density, with more focus on health and wellness activities, and the use of local goods and indigenous material to drive an experience that is truly Jamaican and that will come to mind for the visitors. So yes, we have to now open ourselves to exploit this rich and very lucrative market.
We had an election this year, and there was a change in government, and I believe two of our senators are here. Mark Golden really paved the way along with Philip Paulwell, and as they said, it was a bipartisan. Right now we've come a long way. We know that this thing is moving forward, and that is having the Minister of Finance champion this in Parliament shows us that we're on the right direction. So we know we're actually going to have sales very soon, and we'll hold them to that. I never thought in my time that I would see this happen, and the fact that this is happening across the US and around the world, and especially in my home country, Jamaica, this is going to be a great thing. This is one of the last industries I think we have to really bring in some US dollars, create jobs, and really build something for the Jamaican people that we can hold on to. We won't make the same mistakes of the past, like in bauxite. This product will finish, and will finish here, and it will be a product of Jamaica. So we set out to build the first facility, which we built in Kingston, indoor, outdoor, and in greenhouse. We did similar genetics, and to see not only how they performed in each different environment, but also what the yields are and the actual cost of growing a pound. Before, this has all been done illegally, so there's really been no traceability in what the cost of it is and what the real business aspect is, from not only growing, but from byproducts that can be created, so you really can calculate what you can do as a business from 1 pound of weight. The first set of goals that we set out is to demonstrate the best practices. We want to be following, and the only way to guarantee consistency is to have a set of standards, discipline, regiments. You know, it's been harder for a farmer trying to carry a bucket of water all the way up to the hill, and these things are going to have to change. We're going to have to work with the basic necessities of growing, not only for like the small farmers that have a much harder task, but also that we set out these standards that can be followed day in, day out, because the only way we're going to make any money out of this is to have it consistent day and night. It has to be the same, and we have to be able to guarantee what we say, and we have to do it again and again.
This year is a big year in the United States. There's a ballot initiative, so you have to keep that in mind. There's a big initiative happening. We helped write some of the initiatives in California. I want to share too, I heard this previously, I think, from Courtney Betty here, is he doesn't use the word recreational. We don't use that word in Amsterdam either. We use the word adult use. This is important because as you're moving forward with legislation and elections, if I know nothing about the cannabis industry and the word that you use is recreational, well, I may think, and keep in mind, I don't know much about the industry, but I'm a voter. If I can use cannabis recreationally, what does that mean? That means my 14 or 16-year-old child can use cannabis recreationally. But if I say adult use, automatically, I understand that it's for adults only. That can affect a lot of voters, so keep that in mind. California is the 5th largest economy in the world. Okay, so what happens in California affects a lot of what happens nationwide. So we have to pay attention to things like that. Pay attention to your elected officials. In the United States, you cannot prescribe cannabis. It's a Schedule I substance, correct? And that means it has 0 medical value. I'll say it again. Cannabis, Schedule I substance, 0 medical value, so you cannot prescribe it, you can only recommend it. Listen to the elected officials in the United States. Pay attention to your elected officials here. 99% of the time, all elected officials in the United States use the word prescribe. It goes to show you how educated your elected officials are before they stand in front of a camera that'll make a decision that'll affect your life. It's very important. And although it's a Schedule I substance, which means it has 0 medical value, the United States has a patent, it's written there, and the United States has registered a patent that has registered cannabinoids as antioxidants and neuroprotectants. Okay, which is a contradiction. So you must understand things like this. If you are going to move forward in this industry, I guarantee you will have to advocate to somebody. You will have to explain yourself to somebody as you want to move forward in this industry. It's very difficult to even have a conversation with people about cannabis. Okay, and you will be in that position. You will have to share information such as this patent. 99% of the time when you speak to people in regards to cannabis, what are they giving you? Their opinion. There's a difference between being opinionated versus being educated. This is a challenge that you'll have. You're all here. Fantastic. I appreciate your being here. Thank you very much. You're educating yourselves. Your challenge is going to be educating the next person. Marijuana is something you smoke. Cannabis is something you take. I don't use cannabis, I take it. Do you use Tylenol or paracetamol? No, you take it. People have to understand that there are different methods of ingestion. One of the reasons you're going to have a problem is when you speak to people about cannabis, they think you're smoking it. They're topical applications, sublingual tinctures, a couple of drops under your tongue, right? Suppositories, inhalers, there's many different methods of ingestion. Keep in mind that every prescription medication, every over-the-counter medication that you take has an LD50 rating. What does that mean? If I give every single person in this room a certain amount of medicine, at a certain point, half of you will die. That belongs to every medication you've ever taken. Cannabis is the only substance on planet Earth that has no LD50 rating.
Mr. Hilton, so just give us an overview of what your ministry did while you were in government and now seeing what's happening today. How are we pressing forward?
Well, I'm assuming that you meant with respect to the development of the cannabis industry. And the ministry, as it was then, Industry, Investment and Commerce, had the principal task of developing the regulation that would allow industry, the beginning of and the development of the industry. We first moved to have what we call interim regulations, meaning that we were focused on getting the industry going, but understood from the outset that this was an industry that the knowledge base was not sufficiently well finished, understood, so we had to put it on an interim basis to allow for the amendments and changes that are necessary. But in that, we are keen to establish the framework for a business model so that our investors or traditional farmers and all the stakeholders can have some general direction from government and some specific ones where needed to ensure that form the basis for a sustainable industry. So the regulation would address various aspects such as what sort of licenses will be contemplated, who will be able to participate at the initial stages, what are the conditions for participation. We also address other things like standards. How do we build the standards that make it possible for the industry to develop and to be sustained? We have to look at things like how do we protect the brands that is the brand Jamaica. We look at intellectual property. How can we bring that as part of the overall strategy? So it addresses, for example, the role for small farmers. How can they enter the business? We had proposed in our regulation that the small farmers not be charged a fee in the first 2 years. That was changed by the incoming administration. I think they may need to reconsider that change to ensure that small farmers have a way to access it because of the linked issue of just access to finance generally of small businesses in Jamaica. This would apply to the small farmer in the case of agriculture or the cannabis industry in particular.
You've seen and heard from speakers at the CanEx conference on what's next for the cannabis industry. Thanks for tuning in to Business Access TV, serious about business.